textbook reading and note-taking tips. My name is Brittany. I am the College Transition Retention Coordinator for Missouri College Advising Corps. So basically what that means is I help a bunch of students out after they graduate high school and as they're transitioning to whatever is coming next. Missouri College Advising Corps, a little bit of background about that. You guys all had a college advisor at your high school, and to you, they probably looked like just another teacher or staff or someone at your school. But in reality, they were hired by Missouri College Advising Corps and placed in your high school. What we do is we hire recent college graduates to serve as these college advisors. So you guys probably noticed a lot of the people in your high schools were close to your age. We do that on purpose to kind of keep that near peer model. I know this is a lot to kind of take in, but I say all of that because we always love to hire past advisees. So if you guys are thinking you want to do something in higher ed, or maybe you want to go into counseling, or you want to work with students, or you really enjoy kind of like social work and social services, when you graduate college, keep Missouri College Advising Corps in mind, because we love, love, love hiring past advisees from the high schools that we serve. So keep introducing yourself in the chat. I'm going to take a quick look at that just so I can see if anyone has any questions to start out with. Then I will give you guys a quick kind of overview about me. I love to get to know you guys more than just as a college student. So I thought it might be helpful for you guys to get to know me a little bit. So I'll share a little bit about that. And then afterwards, I will talk a little bit more about my role, and then we will jump right into some notes. So first and foremost, this is a little bit of some fun facts about me. So I'm a dog and a cat mom. Hopefully my dog Molly and the dog I'm watching won't come in the room, but can't guarantee that. That is also my cat Zeusy. I'm calling her my cat. To be honest, she is actually my fiance's brother's cat, but he is away at college in a grad school program in California. So we pretty much acquired a cat, which is new for me. I've never had a cat. I'm a huge sports fanatic. So this is just an overview of like all the teams and things I favor. The bigger the logo, the bigger that sport, I should say, has a hold on my life. So I love, love, love attending Chiefs games. I've gone to a lot of Kansas City Current, which is the women's soccer team in KC games. Huge St. Louis Blues fan. I'm actually originally from St. Louis, but I live in Kansas City. Not that any of you probably needed to know that, but now you know where I'm at. So I'm a huge sports fan. If you ever want to talk sports with me, I'm always down. If anyone is sports management, I find that very interesting. And I've also considered switching to sports psych. I'm a big musical theater fan. So in the back, this person right here with the blonde ponytail, this was actually me. I think my junior year of high school, I was in Footloose. So I did all of my school's musicals. I'm a big runner and fitness enthusiast. So I've really gotten into running in the last couple of years. I like cooking. I'm starting to enjoy baking more. I'm a big morning person. More importantly, I'm a former first-generation college student. So I attended University of Missouri-Columbia, otherwise known as Mizzou. And this is me on my undergrad college graduation. I got a degree in general studies, which is basically just when you put a bunch of stuff together and graduate. So I know some of you have talked about being undecided or always unsure about what you want to do. If you ever want to talk about interdisciplinary studies or a general studies degree, let's chat, because I am a huge proponent and fan of that. I think it's great. This is me at my master's of social work graduation, my grad school graduation. I ended up getting two masters, a master's of social work and a master's of public health. I did a double program, so that was pretty fun. Sorry if I'm cutting in and out. Unfortunately, there is someone else using the internet here, and he is on a class, so I can't kick him off as much as I'd love to. But hopefully, you guys can hear me. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I do. So I send a lot of text message reminders, things about like the FAFSA, making sure you enroll in your classes. You can always schedule a one-on-one virtual meeting with me if you need to. So if you ever need to, maybe want to talk with someone about what major you should be considering. When the FAFSA opens on October 1st, I will send out a link and you guys can all schedule FAFSA help appointments with me. So if you are continuing on to school next year, you will need to renew your FAFSA. I love to provide general support and encouragement. So as I mentioned, I have a social work master's degree. And so I really like to make sure I'm focusing not just on you guys as college students, but you guys as people. And the mental health aspect. So I always like to kind of provide general
right.
support and encouragement when I
That's right.
can.
That's right. Yeah. Mhm.
If you're not muted, make sure you're muted so we don't hear any background noise. I'm always available to answer your questions if you have any. So if you have any questions about anything, I work with students going to colleges all over Missouri, or not all over Missouri, all over the country. So if I don't know the answer, I'll try and look it up. But I also like to encourage you guys and help you to find the answer. But I definitely will get that answer for you. I always like to connect you to resources on your campus. So whether that be counseling, tutoring, advising. If your school has a TRIO program, I love getting students connected to TRIO. Shout out to TRIO. I do some campus visits, certain campuses, and those will be starting soon, like hopefully next week. I'll probably go to a few MCC campuses, UMKC. I might go to UCM, thinking about going to Mizzou, Missouri State, OTC, just to name a few. So I try to go to campuses where I have a big cluster of advisees. And those are pretty easy. I bring usually like brownies or cookies or candy, and you can just stop by on your way to class and say hi. This year I'm piloting a peer mentor program. So that will pair upperclassmen as the peer mentor with some underclassmen on your campus, just so you can get more specific help. Sometimes it's easier to talk to a peer. I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I'm a little bit out of the college game for a while. So it might be easier for you to talk to a peer, especially on your campus. And then I am also getting ready to start biweekly virtual office hours. So next Wednesday, September 14th from 10 to 12, I will just be sitting on Zoom for the 2 hours, and you can drop in and ask any questions you may have. And I'll do those biweekly throughout the whole year. So if anyone has any questions, you will be able to get some help. All right, so we are going to jump right in to textbook reading tips. Sorry, I have some people that are having trouble getting into the meeting. First and foremost, talking about textbooks, if you wait until the first week of classes to buy your books, I know a lot of you already have your books, or most of you should already have your books. If you wait until that first week, you can kind of like read through the syllabus and see what homework assignments pertain to what book. You'll also see what lectures might pertain to what book. And I only say that because as a former college student, I know money is tight. And so there might be times where you don't have to buy every textbook. So like if you have a textbook and it's only required for like one assignment, that might be one to like skip and not buy if it's really expensive. But just keep that in mind when you're planning out like what textbooks to buy and trying to prioritize kind of those textbooks. But make sure you prioritize the important reading. So what I mean by that is sometimes your professors will give you out like extra articles, extra readings. Make sure you just read the primary ones first. And again, use your syllabus as a guide. So if there are assignments or lectures that are pertaining to that reading, make sure you hit those first. And always pay attention to overlap between readings and lectures. So if your professor is talking a lot about something in a lecture and you haven't read that chapter yet, you might want to go back and read that chapter. It might be one that you could skip, but you couldn't. So definitely look into that. And then also listen to the professor. So listen for them to, maybe they're going to highlight, hey, you really need to make sure you read this chapter. It's going to be on the test, or I'm going to do a quiz over this chapter. Make sure you're always listening. You guys know that. You guys are smart. Real quick, I'll pause to say, if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, do that so I can make sure I get a list of who all attended. Make sure you write where you're attending, what your major is. Jumping back into the tips. So read with intent and focus. So I know textbooks are super boring, especially like the really cut and dry ones, but make sure you're kind of reading with focus. If you're just like reading to read, you're not going to get much out of it. So you want to make sure that you're reading with intent to get something out of it, read with focus. It might help to like keep some questions in your brain. So why am I reading this? How does this connect to the notes? Why might this be important in the lectures? Things like that can be helpful to kind of help you focus more. And then I don't like to write in my books. I know some people do. I always try to sell mine back, and usually the more writing, the less they would take back at the bookstore. So I don't necessarily suggest writing in your books if you have no plans to return them, or if it's a book that's like really pertaining to your major. So for instance, if you're going into like physical therapy and you have an anatomy or a biology book and you really like it, you should write in that book, because that's going to be a book you end up keeping anyways. And then if you do want to return your book or sell your book, or if you're renting it, or if it's a library book, definitely don't write in it, but annotate it with sticky flags and Post-its. So when you have like find a really important idea, put like one of the little book flags in there and write a note like, maybe you could write with a date that the professor talked about that in the lecture, or maybe there's a big idea, or maybe there's a word you need to find, or maybe you have a question on that page. But that can be really helpful in kind of connecting what you're reading and really increasing your comprehension of the textbook. Take notes when you're reading. I know that's like, sounds like it will take forever, but taking notes actually kind of helps you further soak in the information, and write down questions. So if you're writing down questions as you're reading, especially if there's something you're not understanding or not grasping, I don't know about y'all, but I do not have a science brain. I have a lot of questions about science and math, but math, hopefully you don't have a math textbook because that sucks. But write down questions, and then in class, tell the professor, hey, I was reading this chapter, I don't get this part. Or go to their office hours and tell them, hey, I was reading this chapter, I don't understand, can you further explain it to me? If you go to professor's office hours, that will go a long way. They will remember who you are. They might bump your grade up later if you're hovering between 2 grades. They might be more likely to be understanding if you have a missed assignment. Definitely attend your office hours. And like I said, write down a lot of questions. Check the end of the chapter for guidance. So if it's like a biology textbook or a science textbook, a lot of times at the end, they'll have like a check for comprehension section that has like questions or overall themes. So if you, before you even start the chapter, if you go to the back and look at that little guidance page, that can kind of help you know what more you need to focus in on and zoom in on in that textbook. If you are just reading like every page, every line, every paragraph, you're going to take a long time reading. So sometimes you do need to kind of skim and be resourceful about what needs to be read and what you are reading, instead of just reading everything in there. Lastly, definitely look at the diagrams and illustrations. I know it can be easy to like want to ignore those, but sometimes they can be helpful, especially if you're a visual learner or someone that likes to see things mapped out. So don't just ignore those and fly past those. They can be very important. That's really it for textbook reading tips. As you progress into more classes, you probably won't have as much assigned reading, like as you grow into like sophomore year, junior year, senior year, depending on what your major is. But when you're starting out, you'll definitely have a lot of required reading. And then if you do go on to grad school is like all reading and discussions and papers. So you'll definitely have to do reading for grad school. So some note-taking tips. The first thing I will say, and if you want to take notes on your computer, that is fine. I took notes on my computer, but if you take notes by hand in a notebook, it's going to be way better for your comprehension. Hearing the lecture and writing it out, it just, for whatever reason, it sticks in your brain better. So keep that in mind. I always had my computer in class. It was a distraction. I am not someone that has a good focus. So if that's you, if you're finding like you're getting on Twitter or you're getting on checking your email or you're zoning out during class, like maybe don't bring your computer, just bring your notebook, or maybe like try and disconnect it from the internet so you're not tempted. There are some good techniques for taking notes on the computer. So if that is you, that is fine, but it can be easier sometimes to write down notes, or at least maybe do both. So have your computer open, but also be writing down notes. Obviously you need to be prepared for class. So I don't just mean like have a notebook, have your backpack. I mean, like make sure you've eaten something, you've gotten some water, try to get as much rest. I know it's easy to stay up late studying or hanging out with friends or doing whatever, but try to get some sleep so you can be more prepared for class. And then staying positive and keeping that mental positive attitude can go a long way with note taking. Note taking is boring. Sitting through English 1000, or I don't know about you guys, but like for me, I did not like sitting through government class or any of those classes. They're boring, and taking notes was boring. But if you gotta stay positive and just think about what your end goal is, it can be a little bit easier to take those notes. And then lastly, make sure you're listening and looking for repetition. So if the professor is saying the same thing like a few times, that's going to be something you want to like highlight and mark down. So that's kind of the basics. We're going to go a little bit more in depth on some strategies, but that's kind of like the overall basics, which I'm sure you guys kind of know, but it can be helpful to hear. So some note-taking strategies. Structured outline notes. So this was one that I did. This probably was like what my note taking was, I feel like, throughout high school and all of college, and it worked well for me, but if it's not for you, that's fine. But you can kind of see, so you start with like a main idea and then you kind of will put all the other ideas underneath it. The problem is if your professor jumps around, it can be hard to like jump back up to the top section. But honestly, if you're just jotting things down, this can be an easy way to take notes. Now, I will say for all of these note-taking strategies, writing down what the professor says word for word is not going to be helpful. Use whatever shorthand works for you, or maybe writing it down in a way that you feel like you can understand is good. Unfortunately, there will be some instances where you might have a professor that speaks really quickly or doesn't use any slides or things of that nature, and that can be tough, but just do your best, take the best notes you can, and that's when you need to supplement your notes with that textbook. I had a professor my freshman year in history class who wrote 2 words on the board at the very beginning of class. He'd write 2, sometimes 3 words on the board, and then he would just lecture at us for 50 minutes, just talking to us, and taking notes was so difficult. And that class was so hard. It had 2 tests. They were both essay tests, 1 midterm, 1 final, and that was the whole class. And I actually did end up doing pretty well in that class, but that took a lot of focus. So just know that not all your professors are going to be ideal for the best note taking, but just do your best. And like I said, supplement it with that textbook reading. Another note taking strategy is the mind map. So I love the idea of this. I think it's really great. So you would write down kind of like the big idea here, and then you might peer off other topics. And then maybe there's something else that connects to debt, or maybe he starts talking more about barbarians. You can put something off over here. The bummer is it can get kind of messy and you might need a big piece of paper, but if you're a visual learner and seeing the connections is helpful to you, this could be a great note-taking strategy. Writing on the slide. So I don't have a visual example for this, but some professors do give out the slides ahead of class. They might have blank slides, or they might just give you all the PowerPoint, or they might give you the notes ahead. And so that can be helpful to write right on those slides. I don't know if professors are still doing this as often. When I was in college, it was done, I would say like maybe 25, 30% of the time, which was kind of nice, but it just isn't always realistic. This is something I've always wanted to get into, not necessarily for note taking, but just for journaling. But I think it's also kind of a cool note taking strategy, because I'm kind of like a doodler and a visual learner, and I think this would be something fun, a fun way to take notes. So this could be a fun way to kind of like take notes, maybe not necessarily during class, but when you are looking through your reading, or maybe when you're trying to transcribe your notes that you wrote. This can be kind of like a fun way to take notes. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with bullet journaling, but I think it's pretty cool. And then lastly, this is one, I don't have an example of this one either, but I've seen it a lot on social media and suggested, and that's like a shared Google Doc, or basically just a shared online document. And this is one of the strategies where it might actually be helpful to have a computer. So this is when you and some other friends in the class all have a running Google Doc, and you're all taking notes in it simultaneously, probably with different fonts or styles or pages or something, but that can be kind of helpful because you can ask questions to classmates in real time. It might get kind of unorganized and disheveled, so just be aware of that. But that can be a really good kind of way to help to work with other people and get some good notes. So I'm going to pause real quick and just reintroduce myself. My name is Brittany. I am the College Transition Retention Coordinator for Missouri College Advising Corps. If you're not muted, try and mute so we're not getting a bunch of background noise. We've got a few more slides to go, and then I will have time at the end for questions. This whole presentation is being recorded, so if you came in late and need to catch up, it will be recorded, and I'll send the link out. But I'm glad that some of you guys have joined me tonight. So to get the most out of your notes, so obviously note-taking strategies are important, but it doesn't really do any good if you don't do anything with the notes. So when you have the notes, the best thing you can do, if possible, is review them the same day. So let's say you take your notes, Tuesday. If you could read them like by the end of Wednesday, that would be great. That's how it's going to stick in your brain. And that's also how you're going to have questions and be able to recall, like, oh, I do remember when he was saying that, I was kind of stuck on this. If you wait too long, it might seem more foreign to you. So it's best if you can review them as soon as possible. Another great strategy is to read a small portion every day to help you build understanding and avoid cramming. So when you guys think of studying, you probably think a couple days before a test, you start studying. But really, if you want to know how to not cram and to study effectively, if you read your notes a little every day, even if it's just 1 page or 2 pages, then when it comes time for the test, you'll already be ready to go. You won't have to stay up all night cramming for the test because you'll have been studying a little bit the whole time. That's also a helpful way to check and see when you're reading through your notes every day, there might be something new that pops out to you. You're like, oh, I didn't realize I didn't understand that, or I'm not getting it. So definitely be reviewing your notes. Have your lecture notes handy when you're reading. So even if it's a reading that's for another Like, let's say you took notes on Tuesday and now you're reading for Thursday's class, still have those lecture notes handy. You never know when things are gonna pop out. You want to make sure you're paying attention to any big ideas that have been said often and look for repetition again. So if your professor's saying it and it's in the lecture, like you can guarantee it's something you need to know for a test or an essay. Lastly, write down questions in your notes, what things you aren't grasping. I might have mentioned this earlier, but anytime you aren't understanding things, write it in your notes. So like if a professor says something during class and you don't get a chance to ask the question right then, write it in your notes. You can always ask during class. You can stop them after class, or you can go to their office hours. Definitely go to their office hours if it's a bigger kind of idea that you're not getting. Like, let's say they're doing a whole new math concept and you need someone to explain it to you, definitely go to their office hours. But it's great if you could kind of like write down questions in your notes so that way you know to go back and ask about it, or ask a friend in the class. It's great too. Okay, so we are at the end. If you guys want, you're welcome to unmute or type a question in the chat. I will quickly reintroduce myself while you guys are all thinking about your questions. So my name is Brittany. I'm the College Transition Retention Coordinator for Missouri College Advising Corps. My main role is just to help you get to and through at least your first year of college. I do offer students to stay on. So after this year, if you've enjoyed having my support, you like getting the text messages, you can stay on for next year. Like I said, in my cohort of students, I have a few freshmen, or I have a lot of freshmen, a few sophomores, some juniors, some seniors. I actually have one super senior. I work with some students that are in the military or some students that are working, really just helping you guys out with whatever is after high school. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording and stop the share.